3 tornadoes on Monday, so it's been a busy week.
And with that, we are actually live as he discusses the tornadoes that were near Schwano. Schwano.
How do you say that?
Schwano.
Nope.
That town that looks like Schwano.
Shawano.
Shawano.
The second A is silent. It's Shawano. Yeah.
Schwano.
Had
whatever.
3 tornadoes. One of them was initially ruled a 4th tornado, and then they said no, it was just skipping, and that was up near Gillett, and which is in the far southwest portions of Oconto County. And then we had a tornado near Marion and a tornado near Pella, which is all basically in a line through Shawano County and just into Oconto County. And that was on Monday.
And the weird thing, because I just looked at this before, and I have to introduce the fact that this is Polygon Issuance number 65. We're doing this on Thursday, which is not typically when we do that, but that's only because our guest on Friday is not in desirable clothing at the time, according to what his email said. We're not sure what he's going to be doing tomorrow night at this time, but it ain't going to be in a white shirt and tie in that studio.
I work Sunday through Thursday. So on Friday, I will be camping, and I will likely be in a t-shirt and covered in dirt and sitting in front of a campfire.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have wanted that in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Actually, I probably wouldn't have connection good enough to get video or send a picture.
Yeah, that'd probably be true. But anyway, you can keep going about. Well, I can go back before I introduce you because people would be like, "Who is this person?"
Oh,
but anyway,
would you like me to introduce myself first?
No, not quite, because I was gonna. But I will mention this. Our guest is up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, Packerland. He's live from the frozen tundra of Lambeau. That's how I did it. But going back to the tornadoes that were on Monday, I went back. I just looked at this like 30 minutes ago. I noticed that Green Bay, where you are, pretty much your entire DMA, has not had a tornado watch, has not had a severe thunderstorm watch this year. And
right.
There's been large portions of Wisconsin that hasn't had a tornado watch at all.
Yes.
Which and go on, because I'm interrupting again.
No, that's fine, Jeff. It's been a very quiet, severe weather-wise around Wisconsin. Around our area specifically for about the last 2 years, and especially this year, we've been running fairly dry. So we were in moderate drought earlier. We caught up a little bit in June. We're running dry once again. We just haven't had a lot of thunderstorms. A lot of the stormy activity has been kind of concentrated just off to our south in Iowa and Illinois and southern Wisconsin.
Yeah, so you can now introduce yourself.
Okay. I am Patrick Powell. I'm the chief meteorologist at WLUK Channel 11 in Green Bay. And as you mentioned, we are my station is about a block and a half away from Lambeau Field. We are on Lombardy Avenue. We are right near the intersection of Lombardy Avenue and Holmgren Way in Green Bay, Wabanon. And you were mispronouncing Shawano earlier.
That's not a good sign. Well, something just happened, at least on my.
Is that on your end or my end?
I don't know which end that was, because you kept talking and then it just froze and stopped. So I wasn't sure what that was.
Okay, well, a little bit more about myself. I have a degree in meteorology from Western Illinois University. I used to chase tornadoes, subcontracted for the Department of Commerce. Before I ended up here, I've worked at the NBC in Omaha, Nebraska. I did mornings there for about 9 years. I worked at the NBC in Terre Haute, Indiana, and I worked at CBS in Amarillo, Texas. I chased tornadoes actively from about 1993 to about 2004.
So there's probably been a lot of stuff. But besides that, you did go to Western Illinois University, which was a bit surprising. Now, you grew up in Illinois, and I'm hoping
Yeah.
you're hearing all this, but was that where your weather interest kind of got started, was growing up in Illinois and eventually going to Western Illinois University?
You know, I'm not exactly positive. A lot of meteorologists will say, you know, I was really interested in weather my whole life, or I was, you know, I'm not exactly sure where mine, you know, my son thinks he wants to be a doctor, and he's an 8th grader. And when you get to that age, you start having thoughts about what you want to do. When I was an 8th grader, I thought I was going to be an NFL quarterback. So I never really thought about anything other than that. And when I started college, I was a chemical engineer. So I worked an internship at Amco Research and Development as an analytical chemist when I was a junior in college, and decided I hated it. And at the time, I was double majoring in meteorology and chemical engineering, and I was going to do atmospheric chemistry. And I hated the chemistry part. So I really, really liked the forecasting part, and I wanted to be out. I wanted to be more active, and so this is what I ended up in. And I'm not sure how I got in TV.
Yeah, well, yeah, you got sidetracked somewhere.
Yeah, I was going to be a research scientist, and I ended up liking the television aspect because I get to kind of control everything around me.
Oh, you're one of those people.
Yes.
Well,
I like to have all my things all arranged the right way on my desk.
Oh, yeah, well. So how did you end up getting into TV from Western Illinois? Because it's not like Western Illinois is like a hotbed of TV people, although I know of several that are from Western Illinois that are now in TV, but I won't blast your age, but they're younger than you.
But what?
But they're younger than you.
Oh, well, I know a few that are older than me also.
Well,
I know a few that are right around my age that are still in television also. Western Illinois has a pretty good broadcasting department and television department, and they have a communications. They have a TV channel that they do a newscast on like 4 or 5 days a week. And when I was in college, I was a junior and I was a meteorology major, and they came to me and said, we don't have anybody to work on the newscast on like Wednesday and Thursday night. I said, oh yeah, I'll come do that. It's easy, I'll do it. So I started doing it, and I really enjoyed it, you know. So that the broadcasting department came to the meteorology department and said, could you send us some people who might want to do weather on TV so we can fill out our newscast? So, and that's how I got into it. And actually, a friend of mine was one of the people who was instrumental in getting me started, and that's Mark Baden, who's the chief meteorologist at WISN in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Which it's just surprising because Western Illinois is not. You think of meteorology, you think Oklahoma or Florida State, and even Iowa State here in Iowa. But I when I've been looking through all the people that I've tried to email, I won't even mention how many. Western Illinois came up quite often, and it's such a small school, and it's surprising how many people that are really good have come out of there. What is it about that school being in a small town in Macomb?
Yeah,
being
great town.
Kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think that's part of the reason that you know, when the National Weather Service went to the 88Ds, when they went to the Doppler radars, the St. Louis office upgraded their old 1957 D. And the 1957 version of the National Weather Service radar got pulled out in St. Louis, and they put it up at the campus at Western Illinois, partially for the meteorology program, just as like an endowment, a gift or whatever, but partially because there's big hole there because it's so far out in the middle of nowhere. There's really not much around it. You know, it's a pretty long way between the St. Louis office and the Davenport office. So, you know, and I would say Western it's a good school, a great campus, great people. I loved my time there. I just loved my time there. Hey Dave, could you turn that down for me, please? And but I think one of the driving factors for me, one of my favorite experiences when I was at Western Illinois was Dr. Williams, who was the synoptic professor, and he was a really passionate and knowledgeable synoptic meteorology professor, and it really helped a lot. So I learned a lot from that, and having a radar on campus, we would learn radar old school. You know, we were storm tracking with grease pencils and you know,
brother.
So yeah, it was we would time out the thunderstorms, and we'd watch our watch and draw a line, and then wait 20 minutes and draw a line and measure the distance. And that's so a lot of those basics, you know, things you learn without the aid of a computer program helped a lot.
And this was in the late 80s and early 90s. And when
I thought you weren't going to give away my age.
I'm not going to say when you were in college. I just know when you were in college.
Late 80s and early 90s,
Yeah.
yes.
We'll mention he's not anywhere close to Social Security age yet. He still has a way.
In college.
Yeah, he's a ways from that still. But anyway, so when you graduated in the 90s sometime, I already know the year, but I'm not going to mention when. There was something big happening in weather that year. But
yes.
So
that was a big drawing factor too. And I mean, going to school at Western Illinois in that time was fascinating. It was fascinating. Yeah, it was a big event for somebody who doesn't know what a big event is, you know, when you're just starting out.
Yeah, and there's a lot of events during that 4-some-year period that, especially ending with that event, which is unfortunately going to really show what your age is.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, that would be the flood.
I don't mind.
That would be the flood of '93, which was the year he graduated. So it was after he had already left Western Illinois and was pretty much wandering the streets looking for a job.
I actually graduated in December '93, so I was still there.
Okay, he was still okay. So he had to go an extra semester. So for a semester, because of his, is it because you had to change and get out of the chemical stuff?
Yeah, that, and I because I had been in chemistry for so long, I ended up with 3 minors and 2 majors. So,
yippee!
So yeah, so I stayed an extra semester. And it was to pick up an additional major. So I thought it might come in handy in case the TV thing didn't work out.
I would assume the extra major was to pick up from the chemical engineering one that you dropped.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It was in physical geography.
Okay. Which is another good thing because you want to know, because in some cases when you're doing the weather, you want to know certain areas, the geography of where you are. For example, you've been in Indiana, in Texas, in Omaha, in Green Bay. The geography is different between Amarillo, Texas.
Oh yeah.
Green Bay, Wisconsin. Green Bay has the bay, Green Bay, which can have the fetch. Sometimes if you get the wind just the right direction. Amarillo has dust storms or tornadoes, or sometimes you'll have tornadoes and dust storms at the same time, in fact. So
snow.
But when you went to your first job, whichever one it was, I can't remember which one it was. Amarillo, and that was in '94. So that was.
Yep.
And were you there during the Fun Fest of '95 in June?
No,
oh, you're lucky.
I had gone to Terre Haute, Indiana. I was only in Amarillo like 10 months.
Oh, you had to miss the Fun Fest in '95. I'm sure you've kicked yourself after that going, I had to go to Terre Haute, Indiana.
I got to tell you, although the weather, forecasting weather in Amarillo is a challenging experience, and it is fun, and it is it'll take a lot out of you real quick. It really runs you ragged for days on end, and that's a very interesting place in the world to forecast. You know, I think I'm a little more Midwestern in roots, and you know, growing up in Chicago and being like in Illinois and Wisconsin and stuff my whole life, in Nebraska, I was much more comfortable, I think, up here.
So you didn't like forecasting 100+ degree temperatures for months on end?
You know, funny story about Amarillo. When and you know, I was from Chicago, so one of the things for television is I had a pretty thick Chicago accent when I got down there, and you know, there's a lot of you know, Texas drawl. It's out in the plains, and I spoke pretty fast, and it just didn't fit very well from a TV perspective. But the people were really nice, and the area was great. You know, it's just I don't think I fit in very well there. You know. But a funny story about Amarillo, when I first got down there, it was like 104. We had the tornado watch #1 on like January 2nd of 1994. So I had been working for like 2 weeks, and they issued a tornado watch, and it's tornado watch #1, first one of the year. I was like, man. And then like 2 weeks later, it's like 85, and I'm out swimming at the pool and in the apartment that I was renting. And I got out of the pool, and people don't bring their towels down to the pool because it's so dry and it's so windy. When you get up out of the pool, the wind blows all the water off you. You end up shivering, and you're dry in like 2 seconds. You don't even make it back to your chair before you could grab your towel to dry off from the pool because the air is just so dry.
Yeah. You'd have like a temperature of like 85 or 90 and a dew point of like 20.
Yeah.
Or 30.
And a 40-mile-an-hour wind.
Yeah.
It's a weird place.
Yeah, but then the thing about it is, if it's 105 and the dew point's like 30 or even 40, the heat index is like 95, and it's warm, but it's not terrible.
It's yeah, it's it wasn't for me.
I and this is me rambling. When I was in Southern California on vacation many years ago, I experienced this dry weather. This was in God, where was it? This was in Burbank. I was at Universal Studios Hollywood. That day, this was in September of 2000 something, I don't remember. 09, I think it was, yeah. And there was a day, it was 98 or 99 degrees, but the dew point was in the 30s, and it didn't feel bad. I was getting a little bit overheated, but it wasn't as bad as it would be if it was like 99 and the dew point was like 70, like it would be like in Iowa, or in some cases even in Wisconsin, maybe not up to Green Bay, but dew points like 60, 65, 70. But I thought, this feels just weird, but it's not hot, because thank God it was September. If it was August, I would have been completely fried or something. But it was in Burbank, which of course it's in kind of the hilly area. It's in there. So it's in that area with kind of the southern end of the San Fernando Valley. But I'm going off on places you've never been to doing forecasting, so we're gonna skip all that. So when you were going to Terre Haute, this is pretty much more Midwestern. There's no dust storms there. So how long were you actually there? I think from what I gather, maybe about a year.
It was almost 2. I think it may have been just over 2 years or just under 2 years, but it was right around there.
Okay.
Terre Haute's it was a great little town to work in, and I still have some friends that I worked with there. I really like Terre Haute. Interesting forecasting.
Yeah.
It was very, very different than Amarillo. While I was there, I think if not the coldest, it was one of the coldest nights of all time, like on record there, which that was 95 and 96. So that was a long time.
It was probably the early February 96.
Yep. And we also had one doozy of a snowstorm, and it's getting towards southern Indiana. They don't get a lot of very big snow, but it was like 16, 18 inches and like 40-mile-an-hour north winds, and it was one good snowstorm. But a lot of fun working down there.
So what made you go to Omaha? Because there's a big jump from going from small Terre Haute and then Amarillo, where you didn't fit in because you were too Midwest, to
Yeah.
Omaha, which is a big market, but it's more or less just centered on Omaha,
Yeah.
and that's it.
I love the city of Omaha. It's a great town. It really is a great town. I chased a lot of tornadoes in Nebraska and Iowa. Um, I I got to work with Jim Flowers, who was the chief meteorologist I was working with there. It was probably one of the best forecasters I've ever worked with. Very detail oriented. When I went to work in Omaha, I was more of a severe weather specialist. I was more concentrating on tornadoes and storm chasing and stuff. And Jim taught me a lot about forecasting snow. And I was pretty strong at radar interpretation and things like that. And Jim was just outstanding at satellite interpretation. So Jim, he was a very good meteorologist, still is. He's at KMTV now in Omaha. And he did a lot, kind of filling in the holes in my growing up as a meteorologist. And he was a terrific mentor to have.
Well, you answered the next question I was going to ask about Jim, because I know he's been like, if you consider Warren Buffett the oracle of Omaha, then Jim Flowers would be like the oracle of meteorology of Omaha, because he's been there. I think he's been at every station in Omaha.
Yes.
So he's been like everywhere.
And he's had two of them at #1, and the station he's at now is growing. So
yeah,
here's, people, and in television, and for people watching at home that don't watch a lot of TV or have cut the cord or, are just doing YouTube stuff. Television is a business where you could be a terrible, terrible meteorologist, but as long as people are watching, you're going to keep your job forever. Jim is good on TV, but he is a great meteorologist. And I hope the people around Omaha realize how lucky they are to have had him forecasting there for, almost 40 years now. They've really had one of the best in the country right in their backyard. And he is just every bit the detail oriented forecaster that I don't know many better.
Yeah, we've just turned this into we're making Jim Flowers the best ever show.
Well, I didn't say he was better than me. I said that he was one of the best I'd ever seen.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna cause.
Jim and I were, and we still are. We're fairly competitive with things.
Except for the fact that if Omaha has more snow than Green Bay, he'd laugh at you for going, ha, we have more snow.
We do seasonal forecasting, and we discuss it every fall. And Jim's, he'll be like, oh, I'm forecasting 20 to 24 inches of snow. I'm like, it's a snowstorm here. Like, we'll get double that in a month.
Yeah, but the difference from Omaha, which you were there for 8 years, doing mornings, and you were doing your storm chasing. So I would assume during that time there was lots of tornadoes that you saw in Nebraska and some in Iowa. And I'll make a mention. Everybody now that chases says Iowa. There's no tornadoes there. They're all really HP, and nobody can see them and whatnot. And because I've had numerous chasers on, and they say Iowa. Nothing happens there. Everything, it's where outbreaks go to die, or it's like, that's what they say. And it's been proven. It's been proven that, last year in Iowa, there were 55 tornadoes, which is above average. This year, I happened to look, and I was thinking we'd only had like 7 or 8 tornadoes. And I look, and I'm thinking, where did all these tornadoes come from? We had 21 so far, and I don't remember any of them. So that tells you, if you don't remember 13 of them, there's a problem, because they were all EF0.
I would say that I probably saw almost an equal amount in Nebraska and Iowa in the time I worked there. I would say that the Nebraska tornadoes were easier to chase because there's not as many hills. There's less vegetation. There's less tree cover. You know, in Iowa, if it isn't plowed down for corn, there's trees. You know, in Nebraska, if it isn't plowed down for corn, it's grass. You know,
prairie.
There just isn't as many trees, and it's flatter. Once you get west of the Missouri, it's flatter. So it is easier to chase in Nebraska, but you know, I think the road network is a little better in Iowa.
Yeah. Comparatively speaking to like the Pilger tornado last year, which was so easily visible in northeastern Nebraska, you could see it for miles.
Yes.
Comparatively speaking to, say, tornadoes like Mapleton a couple of years ago, which is in western Iowa, which was not very well seen, although there's numerous videos of it. It's in that hilly area of the less hills in western Iowa, which pretty much goes across. And that's the problem. Once you get east of those hills, anybody in an Omaha TV station is like, oh, well, let Des Moines take it. Because at that point, it's like the less hills, we don't care about them, those people east of there. Even though
kind of a population hole there.
Yeah. Because and I think there's the problem between Omaha and Des Moines. It's like, well, where does Omaha stations end and where does Des Moines stations take over? Because I follow Twitter on a bunch of the Omaha and Des Moines stations, and I'm seeing both Omaha and Des Moines posting warnings for the same counties. Thinking, okay, does that mean, let's say if you were still on Channel 6 in Omaha, and let's say you were like the chief, which is what Mike LaPointe is now, and you say, I'm going to get on the air for a tornado warning in Carroll County, which I noticed all the Omaha stations do.
Yeah.
The first thing they're going to say, you're going to get a bunch of people calling in Omaha going, why are you on the air? I want to watch all this stuff that's on NBC. Right. Get off the air. And I assume this happens in Green Bay also now.
You get that wherever you are. And I think you know, cutting over programming, you need to do it in a responsible fashion. And just even as a meteorologist, I've been doing this for a while, but I think there's even for an individual tornado warning, there are different tornado warnings, and the Weather Service, you know, they're looking into this with the hazard simplification stuff that the Weather Service might be coming out with in the next couple of years. But they look at, okay, like the Joplin tornado. I mean, a tornado emergency, and it's a horrible tornado, and you know it's on the ground, you know it's doing damage, it's heading right towards a metropolitan area, you know. And then you have like the tornadoes that we had 3 tornadoes the other night on Monday.
Yeah.
And they did some damage. They knocked down some barns, and did some damage to a house, and they knocked down some trees. But they were EF0s. They're barely showing up on radar. We had 3 tornadoes and 0 cloud-to-ground lightning strikes.
Yeah.
So it's not every tornado warning is the same, and I think, you know, there needs to be a little bit of a balance there.
And in hindsight, not every thunderstorm that produces a tornado is the same. Between, say, for example, which is pretty much like the tornado of the year, the Rochelle tornado, big honking tornado in Illinois, compared to the ones near Shawano in Shawano County, north of Green Bay, no lightning. Probably, I didn't even see the radar from it, but I think it was probably looking more like showers than anything.
It was
maybe a rumble of thunder, but that's about it. No lightning. And here's dropping tornadoes. Sounds more like it was cold air funnels that actually reached the ground.
Yeah, you know, other than the high dew points and the temperatures in the 80s, that's more what it was like. I was speaking with some other meteorologists nationally that said that they see that kind of stuff with some tropical systems, like when tropical systems make landfall. Front right quadrant, weak tornadoes, little lightning around the storm, just because of the intense amounts of shear. So it's something that, you know, I think there was a little boundary in there, and I think it was
there was a front that day.
Yeah, Well, no, not only the front, but I think there was an outflow boundary from showers over the Upper Peninsula that had kind of dropped into that Shawano County area, and I think that was just focusing some of the shear.
So when you think about it now, if you're going to have storms that are going to act like landfalling tropical systems, for example, like Bill a couple of weeks ago, your next destination could be somewhere on the Gulf Coast.
Oh, I'm not sure if I have a next destination. I joke that when my son's done with medical school, that maybe I'll take like a retirement job on the Gulf Coast somewhere, like just do weekends and help out some other younger, more energetic meteorologists when I get into my 60s, like that semi-retirement job where I'm going to work a couple days a week just so I keep my feet busy.
Yeah.
But I honestly, I have no plans of leaving here. The one thing, people spend a lot of their career looking for a good fit and a good station. And the one thing I'll say is the ownership here cares. They get the equipment that we ask for. They invest in the people around us. They staff the newsroom. They do everything they can to make sure that we have what we need to be successful and I think it's the competitive nature that I have, but I would rather make $15,000 less than the guy across town and be in first place. Because quite honestly, I'm probably got a little more job security that way.
Well, there is a thing that's coming up this fall. That's called football. That's going to mean you'll be probably in first place, at least for the fall, especially if the Packers do well.
Our station does great, and we're lucky to have most of the Packer games on our station. And being 2 blocks away, let's put it this way: when I have my tickets for a game at Lambeau, I park at the TV station lot and just walk over.
And you don't have to pay the outrageous prices.
That's right. Yeah, it's going to a pro football game here in Green Bay is a lot like going to a college game at Nebraska. It's a lot of people. They're passionate. It's a lot of fun, but it's not. Some of the other NFL stadiums will nickel and dime you and gouge you everywhere you are. It's a little more reasonable here. I think it's because it's a smaller community.
Yeah. So when you get to, and you're going to get to this soon, because unfortunately NFL football just seemingly thought was ended a couple of months ago. It's coming back. So of course, this brings up the point that of Lambeau Field, everybody talks about it. It's always cold in there, which is the case in especially December.
It can be.
So when you get to the week when you're going to have to do forecast a home game, which seemingly happens it'll happen 8 times a year.
Oh yeah.
And then maybe more if they get to the playoffs and get home games. But is that what most people in the fall and into the early winter are more or less watching you or any of the people at your station? Is it mainly for what is the weather going to be at the Packer game or for the Packer game? And they're not going to care what the weather is going to be in Shawano or any other place in the market.
Well, one of the things I love about here most is that it really doesn't matter. It gets cold here and we get a lot of snow, but people don't let that stop them from getting outside. There'll be 80,000 people in the stadium, and there'll be another 100 or 200,000 people watching it at their friend's house or whatever. And we have about 400,000 in the area. But besides Packer games, people are out hunting, they're fishing, ice fishing, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, snowmobiling. So, I mean, there's, even though it's cold, we have enough snow to enjoy it. So the Packers are a big thing. I would say the biggest thing here.
Yeah.
But it's not the only thing. There's a lot of other stuff to do.
Yeah, but not on Sunday.
Even on Sunday.
Well,
if you play on a Thursday night, you should see the snowmobile trails around here on a Sunday. Sunny Sunday afternoon in the winter. if the Packers played on like a Thursday or those late NFL Saturday games that they do, or there's a wild card weekend, and it's packed. It's packed. There's a big thing up in the county north of here called Sled Fest that they do the weekend between the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, because the anticipation is that the Packers will be in both. So in that weekend in between, they have like all these snowmobile races and stuff.
Because they have nothing else to do that weekend.
Right. Well, it's the free weekend. It's
you just hope
do stuff.
You just hope it's not snowing and there's a blizzard.
Yeah.
Which might bring up another point, and I don't know if you still do this or not. I happen to look up old videos from Channel 11, and this brings up a point that some people may not know. Winter storm names. I'm not sure if you still do this. I think you might be.
We do.
Was that a thing that was done that you started, or was it started before you even got there?
It was started by my predecessor, John Chandick. And I don't know how long ago, but I think over like 82 or 83. So it was, I came here in 2004, so it had already been going on for over 20 years before I got here. When I got here, I was not a big fan. I thought it was, and for a couple of reasons, I thought it tends to put meteorologists in a corner, because we use, like, there's going to be significant ice, or there's going to be 5 inches of snow or more. So we're not naming like every, every 1 or 2 inch snow. It has to be like 4 to 6 and up before we'd even consider it. But the scary thing for a meteorologist is you want to name it out ahead of time, like 2 days in advance, kind of like you're giving a winter storm watch. And to put yourself in a box like that 2 days in advance before a snowstorm, before it's even cleared the Front Range of the Rockies, can be challenging, So it comes with its own pitfalls when you just start assigning names to stuff. Because if you assign a name to it, people expect it to be a big deal. And if you're forecasting like 5 inches and it goes, 80 miles south, and Milwaukee gets it and Green Bay ends up with 2 or 3, then they're like, oh, big deal. Why'd you put a name on that? But over time, I think the people around our area like it. I think they use it. I think for the most part, there are some that just hate it. There are some that think that it's the dumbest thing that they've ever used. But in the 11 and a half years I've been here, our competitor TV stations and the local newspaper will say, Winter Storm Bill is coming after we name it. It kind of takes on a life of its own.
So in turn, you name a storm, and then competitors use the name.
Especially when they're new, when they're like a younger meteorologist or a younger reporter for the local newspaper. Yeah, it has happened, and we get a big kick out of it. And we're like, oh, look, they're using our names. I hope they use our hashtag too.
Oh, brother. Oh, so when the Weather Channel started naming winter storms, how was people in Green Bay, if you could tell, were confused by, well, this winter storm got this name, but you named it this. So then it's like, what is it? Does it have 2 names? Is it going to be like the Western Pacific with typhoon names?
Right. I think with the Weather Channel, they name a lot of and they name it based on impacts and population and snowfall and intensity and stuff like that. So because of the population impact here, it has to catch like us and Minneapolis and Detroit to get a name, so they don't name a lot of the storms that come through here. We have noticed a little bit of confusion, mainly because we go in alphabetical order, and much like the Weather Channel does, we go in alphabetical order, and we've been doing that for 30 something years now. And so the people are like, oh, well, I remember that storm and that blizzard and that storm and that storm. So we've had 4 storms that have been 6 inches or more, right? So when the Weather Channel's at T and we're only at C, then people are like, well, why did they have so many names? We haven't had that much snow. Why have they used so many names? So there's a little bit of that. Overall, I think the people in our viewing area watch us a lot more than they watch the Weather Channel. It hasn't been as much of an issue as we were worried it was going to be. We were very concerned that it would be a big confusing factor. One of the last things you want to do as a TV station is confuse people. You know, you want people to, at the end of the day, the idea is to create a forecast and get the point home. And so the people can prepare, so people know what's going to happen. And if there's this organization is naming it and then we're naming it the public seems to have taken to it pretty well.
So are you using the names like, for example, go A, B, C, D, but if you get to the end of the list, let's say you're at J, do you start the next season with the K name, or do you go back and use another list?
No, we go back and use another list. We start at A every year.
Well, you'll never get past like J.
We've gotten to N in 2008, 2009, I believe. We got down to N. And part of the reason was we had like 49 inches of snow in the month of December. And none of them were more than 8 inches. We had like every third day for the entire month of December, we had like a 6-inch snow. So we had snow. I call it the month I didn't sleep. It set the monthly record for snowfall here. It was horrible. And I'm sure, as a forecaster, when you're working as a synoptic forecaster, usually you're watching a snowstorm a week out, but you really start closing in on it about 3 days away.
Yeah.
And you're getting into the more medium range models, and you're going through the grids, and you're going through, different methods for forecasting, and you're going through like Cook method or the 850 millibar rule or things like that. So you're going through all these things. So you really are dissecting the computer models at that point. So when you do that, and there's a storm every third day for like 4.5 weeks, it wore on me. I was working between 10 and 15-hour days for about 4.5 weeks, and I think I had like 2 or 3 days off.
Now, when you talk about naming your winter storms, and you said it has to impact the area, I would assume when you're talking about the area, I'm assuming you're meaning Green Bay. Or at least the majority of the DMA that may include Green Bay. Yes,
the majority of the DMA, and Green Bay is kind of in the center. So it just by location, if it affects the majority of the DMA, it affects Green Bay. But Green Bay is our biggest city, but the population center around Appleton and Oshkosh, from down along the north end of Lake Winnebago and through the southern end of the Fox River Valley, the population there and around the tip of the bay here where the city of Green Bay sits is almost equivalent. And then there's a third population center right along the lakeshore, like Manitowoc, Kewaunee, Sheboygan, along the eastern side of our area.
So when you have so many different type of weather microclimates, you could have a lake breeze, you have the fetch from Green Bay if you have a northeast wind, which I notice even if you have a snowstorm moving in from like say like a low pressure moves in from southeast Iowa to, let's say, southwestern Michigan, you get a fetch coming in the northeast, you could turn a 2-inch snow into like a 7 or 8 or 9, and then something that you predicted was like going to dump 2 or 3 is now needing a name because it got dumped 7 inches of snow somewhere. I'm sure that's happened.
We take that into account. And we go through lake temperatures. We go through 850 and 700 millibar temperatures. We go through, we don't typically, because of the storm tracks, like you said, going from Iowa towards southern Michigan, we don't get much in the way of lake effect snow, like a true lake effect snow where it's like sunny and you have a lake band. We get more lake enhanced snow, which is more synoptically lifted on the north side of a warm front with the east winds coming across Lake Michigan. So we get the warm air advection snow, but it gets intensified from moisture underneath because of the warm lake. So we end up with, and we call it, I have been calling it lake enhanced snow for the last 12 years here. But you're right. I think one of the hardest things, you talk about the microclimates, and I don't know if folks at home, can I pick up the phone and walk it with me? Because I can show you something. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to grab this.
Yeah,
I'll show you what I mean.
Yeah,
so
we want visuals.
All right, here. This is our radar. This is our storm tracker. And I'm going to put this up here, and I'll show you. Here's a lake breeze right now coming in off of Lake Michigan. You can see it on the radar right in here. And then here, we often get a secondary breeze coming down off the bay. And often I'll have a third breeze on strong southerly winds that will come up off of Lake Winnebago. So I will have intersecting boundaries in here right over like Appleton and Green Bay area. And then that happens quite a bit. So it's not only the lake breeze that we have, but because of the bay and Lake Winnebago, we end up with more than one breeze. And when you're forecasting or when you're working a severe weather situation, that can be
a mess.
And interesting.
Disaster has happened.
How's that?
I
think I dropped my phone. All right. So I'm going to see if I can tilt it down a little bit. There we go. Okay. So it's that kind of stuff that, and quite honestly, that's what we go to school for. That's the kind of stuff we train for. When I'm at the wall and I'm working severe weather and I'm watching an individual thunderstorm crashing into one of those breezes, my ears are up. I'm paying attention to it because that's what we're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, it's either going to A, get stronger, B, completely dissipate, or C, do nothing. It's going to depend on what's going on. Because if with all these breezes coming in, if the temperature was about 15 degrees warmer, you'd probably have little thunderstorms developing all over the place that would last about an hour or two and then collapse. Yep. If it was warmer, which it hasn't been lately. It's been horrifically cold. And I'd go back to this. Yes, we're doing this on July 9th. I didn't have my air conditioner on today. I did not have my air conditioner on yesterday. I didn't have the air conditioner on most of the day before that. I mean, yesterday it did not. I think it barely got to 70 here yesterday. Now today it got well into the mid to upper 70s. But
you're in Iowa, okay. In my viewing area, I would bet probably 30 or 40% of the people in my viewing area don't even have air conditioning. Like it's never been put in their house.
Yeah, they have to suffer.
Well, you get next to the lake, or you get up in the trees in the Northwoods, and it's shaded and it's cooler. And even on the hottest days, it's those hot days that are really bad for them. But I'd say 98% of the time, it's no big deal.
And you always have the lake. You could always go to a lake, because there's always, even on the days when there's no lake breeze, if you're like right at the lake, you're going to be at least somewhat cooler, even if the wind is blowing off the lake.
Right. Well,
there's always some breeze coming from some lake, either Lake Winnebago coming off of Green. There's lake breezes everywhere.
Even Lake Winnebago at the peak of the summer, say mid-late August, when Lake Winnebago, because Lake Winnebago is not that deep, but it'll be 84, 85 degrees at the warmest. And the mid to late August. So, I mean, it gets feeling like bath water, and it's great for water skiing. But, Lake Winnebago, I don't know how familiar you are, Jeff, but Lake Winnebago has got to be almost 40 miles north to south and about 25 miles east to west, and it's only like 25 feet deep.
Which you can just walk across it.
Yep.
Because it's kind of, it just is like, almost like the Lake Winnebago should have been put part of Green Bay or something, because it doesn't make any sense there. But
I will bet at some point they were connected. That whole Fox River Valley, probably. The Lake Winnebago is not that much higher than the bay. I'm trying to think of the elevation difference, but it escapes me right now. There's only a couple small locks between Lake Winnebago and Green Bay.
So when we talk about the microclimates with all these lake breezes and all this stuff happening, does that make the forecast, for example, like a forecast you do for tomorrow, when is the lake breeze going to happen? Which lake is going to do it? Is it going to be the Bay? Is it going to be Lake Winnebago? Is it going to be Lake Michigan? What's the north wind going to be at what time? Where's it going to change? This just sounds like a headache waiting to happen.
It can be. It can be. And, you know, typically when the lakes freeze, then everything's a whole lot easier. But before the lakes freeze, while the lakes open, when they open up, and the most obviously Lake Michigan is the biggest body of water, and we are on the west side of it. So when we have west winds, we get upwelling near Manitowoc, near Kewaunee, Sturgeon Bay, up in Door County. And that's really where we get the biggest impacts from the lakes. Lake Michigan is by far the biggest and the most consistent lake breeze that we get. And we do our forecast, like my forecast today, we have mostly sunny and 80 for Green Bay. But in the Northwood, like north and northwest, west of the Bay and north of Green Bay, it's a different microclimate. It goes up in elevation. Mountain, Lakewood, heading out towards Rhinelander. It's a higher elevation. There's some ski resorts out there. So we do a separate forecast for the northern part of the area, and then we do a separate forecast for the lakeshore. So while it's 80 in Green Bay, it might be 78 in the northern part of our area, and it might be 68 along the lake, because the lake is so cool yet. I mean, I think the lake temperature is only in the mid 50s.
I think you're just happy when winter comes, because then you can name winter storms and you don't have to worry about lake breezes. You just have to worry about enhanced lake snow bands, which I would assume only happens when the lake is still open. Because if it's frozen, it's not happening.
Lake Michigan very rarely freezes all the way over. In the last couple of years, it's come close. It's been up in the, I think, it hit 98% like 2 years ago, which was the most that Lake Michigan's been frozen since like the mid 1970s. Lake Michigan doesn't freeze all the way over very often. It's the lake enhanced snow is something we kind of always got to work with and deal with. But I don't know, as a meteorologist, the two most challenging things for a meteorologist, and especially being on TV, is one, during the summer, trying to explain isolated severe storms where you have high cape, you break the cap, you end up with isolated thunderstorms, and people are like, what's it going to do in my yard at 5 p.m.? Like, there's going to be a bad thunderstorm out there. I don't know where it's going to be. I just don't. I don't know if it's going to be in Shawano. I don't know if it's going to be in Appleton. I don't know if it's going to be in Madison. Well, I mean, okay, a little tighter than that, but you know, you can't pinpoint those things. And the other thing is snow. Winter storms, there is so much that goes into forecasting winter storm. Snow ratios, mid-level lift, the actual track of the storm, mid-level temperatures, the types of snowflakes you're generating, where the lift is moving through the atmosphere, what temperature gradients it's moving through, and then throw on top of that the lake, and you know, it's challenging.
And pressure gradient and all that stuff for blizzard type events, because you never know when that's going to happen. It seems like there's always a blizzard sometime, somewhere.
We typically get about 1 to 2 a year. I would bet our blizzard average is about 1.5 a year here. There are some winters where we'll get 2 or 3, and then there's some winters where we get none. This last winter was our biggest snowfall. This whole last winter was like 5 inches.
Oh.
So, which was amazing. I've been here 11 years. I've never had a winter like that. I've had other winters where, you know, we don't need every snow is more than 4. So it was a very dry and quiet winter, which turned into a dry and quiet spring for us. So, and that's why we're dry for the year.
So when you look back at, and I could do your whole TV career, what is the most memorable event that you've worked during?
Single event?
Event. We could even do single event in, let's say, the 2 big places you worked at the longest, Omaha and Green Bay, or all together.
Okay. Both of them snow events. And that comes from somebody who chased tornadoes and subcontracted chasing tornadoes for the Department of Commerce. Both of them are snow events. You would probably remember the Omaha event as October '97.
Yes.
The October snowstorm of '97.
Yep.
I had a friend that was in grad school at Iowa State, and I was working Friday morning, and my forecast for Saturday was I had like 8 to 12 inches of snow, thunder and lightning, and I was forecasting convective snow.
That sounds like October.
Yeah, and it was like October 27th of '97.
Yeah.
And I went to Iowa State. I was younger. A buddy of mine was, I don't even remember. So I went up to Iowa State to visit this friend of mine, and I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning on Sunday morning at Iowa State in Ames to a giant crash of thunder. And I looked out the window and I saw snowflakes about this big, and they were falling past the window real slow. And I was like, oh man, uh-oh. And I turned on the TV, and Channel 13 in Iowa, WHO, they were doing news with flashlights, holding flashlights up to their face, doing news at 4:30 in the morning on a Sunday. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta. So I called my station, and I was like, what is going on? So I get back to the TV station, and we ended up with 14.7 inches, I believe, 13.7. It was right around 14 inches. Thunder and lightning started just after 10 o'clock at night. Snowed through about 6 in the morning. Omaha lost about 500,000 trees. My house had no power for 6 days. It was one of the worst storms I've ever seen, because up until that point, the leaves hadn't even changed color yet. They were still green.
Yeah.
So, and it brought down thousands.
And I'll make mention that, because I do remember that. The interesting thing about October '97, because I did a blog post on our website about this, because that was the weirdest month weather ever. Until May a couple of years ago, where we went from a big snowstorm in northern Iowa to 100 degrees 2 weeks later, which made no absolute sense. That was May 2013. October '97 was just as bad. We had record high temperatures the first part of the month, where it was like 85 to 90 in October, which is completely nuts. Right. And that snowstorm you talked about, it dumped here where I'm at about 6.5. Trees, power lines went down. I had no school for 2 days because I was in high school then. And I'm thinking, it's October. What the heck is December going to look like if it's snowing like crazy and there's snow everywhere? There was more trees and branches down than snow, because the snow was heavy and wet, which was surprising.
Trees came down and the snow melted off, and you're like, what happened?
Yeah, the snow melted. And then I don't think we had snow for another like 6 weeks.
It was almost 2 months. Yeah.
Okay, but there was the first snow. But you just made me remind myself of that. But
okay, and 2 other things. Actually, I have a million things running through my mind now. Long career will do that to you. But one more quick from Omaha. I was working one morning. I was forecasting a high of 94. And we had a heat burst come across central Nebraska. So we had these thunderstorms that were moving in from central Nebraska. The thunderstorm collapsed. Whoops.
It collapsed. That's what happened.
How did that work?
Yeah, that was good visual.
Right. So the thunderstorm collapsed, and the dry adiabats came out of the thunderstorm. The thunderstorm completely went dry, and we hit 104 with like a 40-mile-an-hour wind at 5:30 in the morning before the sun came up. And I was forecasting a high that day of like 90. And I was like, uh-oh, I better adjust forecast. And that afternoon, we only came back to like 90. But we hit a high of like 104, and the sun wasn't even up. One of the weirdest things I've ever seen. But then working here, and this is 2012, we had, after St. Patrick's Day, we had almost 40 inches of snow after St. Patrick's Day. But that mainly came in 2 storms, and in between those 2 storms, we had a tornado outbreak. So we had a 17-inch snowstorm on like March 22nd and 23rd of 2012, and then on April 7th we had a tornado outbreak, and April 19th we had another 10 inches.
Yep,
And,
that sounds like Wisconsin.
that 3-week period was one of the weirdest of, and the first storm of that specifically, forecasting that was one of the toughest snowstorms I've forecast in my career, because it was so, Appleton ended up with 10, Green Bay ended up with 17 and a half, Oshkosh had like 3, and Fond du Lac had none, because the cutoff line was so, and we had some big wet snow in Appleton, and then it was more fluffy and colder up in Green Bay, and you know, Green Bay and Appleton are a half-hour drive apart, so it was quite a shocking transition.
Was that, compared to all the other, was that like the worst snowstorm, or was the one in 97 the worst?
The one in 97 did the most damage. You know, the trees here, they did in March, they didn't have any leaves on them. We've had a couple of blizzards here that have had, you know, 50 and 60 mile an hour winds that have been worse, but that one was just a lot of, it was late in the season. It's after St. Patrick's Day. People are just sick of it. You know, they're ready for the snow to be done. Everybody's tired of it. And then, you know, the end of March, you get that much snow, and then a couple of weeks later, you get 10 inches, and people were just ready to. They were done with seeing me on TV for a while.
Except then they saw you again with tornadoes.
Right, and they don't want to see that either. So yeah, it's but you know, we don't make the weather, and we don't try to influence the weather, and there's nothing we can do about it. We're trying to help people prepare, but sometimes, you know, it's like they get angry at the messenger.
And and this leads me to a question. I'm going to try to get this short because you have a newscast soon. But yeah, let's say, for example, there's like a tornado on the ground, and it's like near, well, let's say Appleton. It's a Sunday. It's September. The Packers are playing. They're likely not at home. Well, we'll just say they're not at home. They're on the road somewhere.
Okay.
And you are a Fox affiliate.
Yep.
So you'd be carrying it, even if it's it's like, let's say it's the Packers and the Bears, and they're in Chicago. And there's a tornado. It's in Appleton. It's a tornado. It's on the ground. Are you going to interrupt on the Fox affiliate on the .1 to interrupt for a tornado on the ground, and getting a bunch of angry emails and phone calls from Packer fans that say, I don't care, it's in Appleton? Would you do that? What would you do if that was to happen? Because it probably will now, because I just put the kiss of death on it.
Yeah, don't curse me. We have plans in place, and I mean, it's not a giant secret. I'm pretty sure every TV station, any responsible TV station in the country, should have a plan in place for just something like that. Our big advantage here is we have the .1, but we also have CW14. So we have a complete sister station right here in this building that we can transmit on like that at any given time. Not a .2, an actual channel 14. So what we would typically do, if the Packers are on, there's a tornado warning, I would cut in and say there's a tornado on the ground heading towards Appleton. We are going to do live coverage of the tornado on our affiliate, Channel 14, that we are going to leave the Packer game on Channel 11. On Channel 11, we would put a bug, we would have the crawl running, we would have the radar, we would have the warning on. On Channel 14, we go wall to wall. And
you'd be surprised that people would still say, get that bug off. I want to see the Packer game. I'm missing something.
Yes. And there are always going to be people that complain in any given situation. But I think, for one, it's our responsibility to look out for the public good. Two, and this is, you know, I think it has something to do with the lack of severe weather that we've had, and maybe we've taken a pretty responsible approach to it. You know, some stations, they're like, we're cutting on and we're staying on no matter what. Some stations are like, we're never going on. And my bosses leave it to me for the most part. And we try to take a responsible approach, like an informational approach, and we'll get the information on and get off and get you what you need and get out of there. You know, we don't want to be jumping all over programming continuously unless we have to. And that being said, on Monday of this week, I did about 90 minutes of live tornado coverage. So
And how many people yelled and screamed into your email box or to your phone messages?
How many? Just seriously? I had one complaint on Facebook that I ran over Jeopardy.
Oh, good grief!
And that was it. They were mad. People. Probably the most angry emails I have ever gotten in my career at both in Omaha and here are for running over Jeopardy. and that's not kidding. Yeah, people
don't air Jeopardy during tornado season. Air it at a time that's earlier in the afternoon.
When I was younger, just starting in Omaha, I ran over Final Jeopardy with a tornado warning. They had a tornado warning heading for Bellevue, Nebraska, which is a city of about 20,000.
Yeah,
and tornado on the ground heading for Bellevue, Nebraska, and which is near off at Air Force Base.
Yeah, off at Air Force Base.
So I do a cut in for a tornado on the ground in Sarpy County heading towards Bellevue, towards Bellevue, and people, it was right over Final Jeopardy, and people were mad. They were really mad. I try to be as responsible as I can with it, but at the end of the day, I'm going to make the decision that I think is right for the people at home, Yeah. And I don't want to tick people off, but I don't want to have anybody get killed while I'm working.
And the problem is they might do it anyway. I mean, you can't hold everybody's hand or take them to the basement, or in this case with a snowstorm, which seems like a month away from now, given it's July. But you can't say, well, there's snow coming, so don't go out. People will anyway, because you can't.
You're right. And people will, and there's some that do it just because they're defiant. One of the things that always comes to mind, and you may be too young for this, but there was I'm trying to think of his name. He was named after a president, the older guy who lived on the side of Mount St. Helens, and they were like, Mount St. Helens.
Harry Truman.
Yes, you got to get out of here. And the guy's like, I've lived here for 80 years. I'm not moving. Some people are just going to be defiant, and I can't help everybody. And there has to be a certain sense of personal responsibility, but there's also a part of it as broadcasters on television that I think is our responsibility to communicate. And like I was saying before, not all tornado warnings are the same. Some are more dangerous situations than others. And I think you can convey that in the words you use and your facial expressions and how you present the information. And I think as a broadcaster, I think that's part of our responsibility. And quite honestly, I think it's something that you learn with experience to be able to drive those important points home when people really need them.
So when you look at what today, social media, all this stuff, and people are getting their weather on apps and all of the websites and from other people and other places, why should people go to your station if they're from Green Bay, Appleton, the Fox Valley?
Yeah.
Why should they go to your station versus going to Weather Underground or the Weather Channel or their app on their phone, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
I think there is a value. I think there's a lot of value in the app on your phone. We have an app. We have a Fox 11 weather app. Inside our app, there's a lightning notification. And I used to coach baseball. And one of the first things I thought was, oh my God, how useful would this have been as a baseball coach with 40 kids out on a diamond, out in a park, and that lightning notification pops up on my phone and my phone buzzes and it tells me lightning's within 15 miles. How useful would that have been when I was coaching? So I think there's a huge, huge advantage. I have a radar scope on my phone. I have Fox 11 weather app on my phone. I have a lot of weather related things. I think that the apps are great. Getting a forecast from, Weather Underground or weather.com, I think basically you're getting regurgitated computer model data. It's a computer model that's basically spitting out a number for you. There isn't a meteorologist that's going through that computer data or multiple computer models for your location. And that's what we do, going through those individual computer models. And we go through multiple computer models every day for my area. And I've worked here for, almost 12 years now. I know the area. I know where the lake breezes are. I know what to look for. I know what the models miss, and the models don't know what the models miss, you know? So
Yeah.
I think there's an inherent value in having an actual meteorologist look at things and assess them. You know, I can take an x-ray of my shoulder and look at my x-ray and see if there's a broken bone. I can't tell you how to fix it. I can't tell you how bad it's broken. I can't relate it to other broken bones that people have had, but that's why you have a doctor, you know?
Yeah.
So I think there's a level of professionalism that's still needed from us.
So where do you
Plus,
see where
we make it easy?
Yeah.
How easy is it for somebody to lay back on their couch, flip on Fox 11 and say, there's my forecast. That's all I need for tomorrow. We try to make it as easy as possible.
Like the easy button on Staples.
That's what it's supposed to be. You don't have to do all the math. I'll do it for you.
So when you look at the future of, let's say, TV meteorology, there's the likelihood is it's probably not going to get as good as it is now, and it's probably going to get worse.
You think?
Yeah. Do you see yourself having a job at retirement still there or still in television?
Honestly, yeah. I know there's a lot of people that think that the television, you know, radio has had to rediscover itself, and it has competition from Sirius XM and things like that, and it's had to change. I think television is going through that change, but I also notice a lot of people are cutting cable. A lot of people are going to the web. A lot of people are going to YouTube apps, things like that. My job isn't to learn how to monetize that stuff, or I need to make sure that we have a weather presence on the web and a weather presence on our app, and that I am getting the weather information out. How the viewers get it, or the users, or the app user, or the viewer on the web, those are just issues that the business model needs to address. And I think it's there. And quite honestly, this is just from a user, from a television user. I watch more over-the-air TV now than I have in the last 15 years, because I cut out cable and I've gone to Hulu, Netflix, and an antenna. And I swear I watch way more broadcast TV straight off the antenna than I have in 15 years. And I love it. And, you know, for what my cable bill was, it's so worth it.
Yeah, you don't want to know how much my cable bill is. And
I think as people get sick, I think as you have obviously a high bandwidth because you're doing the Polygon and you have your website. So I think as people get away from cable and switch basically from cable to internet, I think there's going to be a hole there for TV. And this is just me speculating, but I think there will be TV antennas inside your iPhone, inside your Android in the next few years. And I think that broadcast signal that we're sending out, you will be able to just hit a button on your phone and watch whatever TV station in Cedar Rapids or Des Moines or Green Bay or Chicago, whatever you want, right there on your phone, wherever you are, whether you're traveling down on the subway, or whether you're riding in a bus, or whether you're sitting at a ball game, or wherever. I think you'll just be able to watch the broadcast.
See, you came up with something, so you can quit your job and do that.
I like what I do. I listen. I'll leave the engineering and the technology and all that stuff to other people. I really, I love what I do, and I'm fascinated by the developments. The meteorology profession is going to change remarkably in the next 5 years, and it is going to be an amazing transformation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
But now you made me miss it. Yeah, now I know. Like, what do you think is going to be? Because I'm butting up against your thing, so I'm trying to.
I got a few more minutes, but
what do you think is the what you see as the biggest thing that's going to come in the next 5 years? Do you see we have dual pol now? Do you think we're going to have like the phased array radar if they can ever get the cost down?
GOES-R.
Oh yeah.
GOZAR is going to be, I just did a full day training with some NOAA people at the AMS conference, and GOZAR is going to make a big leap for meteorology. GOZAR is the equivalent of going from the 74s to the 88Ds. It is the satellite equivalent of jumping to dual pole radar. It really is. It's amazing. The technological stuff that's in GOZAR, the forecast processes, the high resolution modeling that they're going to be doing now at NOAA. They're running the ensembles, and we've gone more towards ensemble-based forecasting instead of deterministic. The changes that are happening in NCEP and initialization, the hazard simplification project coming out of NOAA in the next couple of years. I think warning times are going to be maybe 2 or 3 times better than they are now. If you get a 5-minute warning on a severe thunderstorm warning, 5 minutes ahead of time, I think it's going to be more like 20. The stuff that I saw at the AMS conference this year, amazing, just amazing. And there are some big things.
I'm just hoping the warning isn't going to be longer, like 45 minutes to an hour, because especially with tornado warnings, that could cause trouble, especially in Oklahoma. That's where I'd like short-term warnings. It's like 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it's like and the polygons make them shorter, smaller. It's like 30 minutes, 30 minutes. It just makes more tornado warnings get issued, but you're not building this humongous tornado polygon, and it's for an hour and 20 minutes, and then you're spending an hour and 20 minutes on the air going, there's still a tornado warning for Shawano County.
Right. Well, the studies that they're doing are showing that the updraft increase in with the global lightning mapper that's going on to GOZAR, the updraft increase changes the total amount of lightning in the thunderstorm. If the lightning jumps 2 or 3 sigmas, the probability of severe weather with that storm is like 90%, and it's amazing. The people at the Storm Prediction Center and the test bed are right now trying to forecast 20 minutes in advance based on the increase in the total lightning in the storm, and they're having a lot of success. It's the stuff that they're doing is literally the stuff I was dreaming of 10 years ago, not even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and they're working on it. So it's going to be fantastic. It really is. And the resolution, the satellite pictures, great stuff coming. And the computer modeling too is getting much better.
Now, our only hope is that the GOZAR is not going to go up on a SpaceX rocket. Those things are exploding every 5 minutes.
It's set to launch March of 2016, and they're launching it from Cape Canaveral. So I would bet that's a NOAA project or a NASA project.
Yeah, SpaceX is out of Wallops Island.
Yeah.
Although the last one, I think, the last SpaceX thing, I think, went from Cape Canaveral.
Did it?
But I know.
Well, then I'm not in the delivery business. I'm in the I'm just in the data.
Because, and you may remember this, the fact that the United States, we've already lost one GOES satellite from launch back in 86, which occurred right after Challenger exploded. There was a GOES thing that went up and it exploded. So
that's accelerated the process of moving all these. The success with GOZAR and the test bed that they're running is so high that I think it's going to come online fairly quickly.
Yeah, when it gets up there, it's going to be like on. And of course, when it gets up there, it won't be GOZAR anymore. It'll change to, I believe, GOES 16 or the number, I would assume.
I think 16.
Yeah. And then, of course, they'd have to immediately, because the GOESs that are up there now are nearing the end of their life. Yep. So they're going to have to get GOES S, which will be 17. They're going to have to start launching a bunch of them up there.
They're all scheduled.
Yeah.
The director of NOAA was at the American Meteorological Society conference, and he showed us where they were all scheduled and the launch dates and like the preliminary launch dates and when they're all going to go out. They have them scheduled out for, I think, the next 3 or 4.
Yeah, they'll be delayed. They always are. But yeah, it's 8:30, so we want to get to the shout outs, which I never told you. I never tell any guests about it because I want it to be off the wall. You can shout out a person, which you might say is Jim Flowers, or a place, a thing, anything. It could be weather related. You could talk about camping in your favorite campground. So you can go ahead.
Well, since this is a meteorological forum, I'll give a shout out to the American Meteorological Society Broadcast Board, which I was a part of a couple of years ago, and the Station Scientist Committee. And I know that the station scientists and the broadcast board are all about trying to increase the science level and increase the knowledge level, not only for the meteorologists, but across all platforms. So I think your podcast here is helping to do those things. So I'll give a shout out to them.
Even though this is only the 65th one. Unlike a show like Weather Brains, which has been on for 10 years, it'll be 10 years in January, and they're nearing 500. But this, my show is only, and it's only my show because I'm the only host, because all my co-hosts have seemingly gotten too busy to do it. So anyway.
Really?
Yeah, they're too busy. But anyway, too bad for them. They don't get the good stuff.
That's right.
So anyway, I have to think about what I have to shout out, because I probably am gonna shout out a lot of the Go stuff that you mentioned, because I think it was the one that exploded in '86. I think was supposed to be Go's G, I think it was, or something, and it exploded. And there's video of that on YouTube of it going up. So I might mention that, because and I could mention, if I had my pictures here, the first satellite that ever went up the Tyros thing went at the Smithsonian in Washington. They have a replica of, I think it wasn't the first one, I think it was the second one, and I took a picture of it. It's not the original, it's a replica. I think it was a test thing, so I could do that too, because I thought that's fascinating, so I'll take a picture. But anyway, so other than that, I don't think there's much of anything else except to mention the upcoming guests, including some that ended up starting a Twitter fight earlier this evening.
Who's that?
That would be Nick down in.
Oh, you got Nick up, huh?
Yes, Nick's been.
Tell Nick he owes me lunch.
Oh, Nick's in trouble. So, but yeah, he's going to be on whenever he can get a weekend guy or woman to be at his station down in Hattiesburg, because I emailed him about 2 months ago. So other than that, next week, I'm not sure what's going to happen, because we don't have a guest at this point for that. But the week after that, and I'd have to look up what our guests are. I don't remember what they are. Oh, gosh.
If you want a suggestion for a guest, try Sean Sublett with Climate Central. He used to be the chief at WSET in Lynchburg, Virginia. He's a friend of mine. Smart guy.
Yeah, I thought about him because I looked him up, but I haven't emailed him yet. He just
switched to Climate Central. So
yeah, because I know because I noticed that he had left his big wig job in television to go to Climate Central, and I was wondering, why did he do that? But yeah, I'd noticed he did that, and he's really good at it. But after that, I can't remember who's on. Let me look. You don't have that much. You have a little bit of time. Let me look. I know Travis Meyer at KOTV in Tulsa will be on July 31st. I do know that. And if he is not available, his big wig. Oh, wait a minute. Now, okay. In fact, Travis just sent me an email, which is kind of really strange. I don't know why he sent me an email, but evidently he might be watching and might be thinking, I don't want to be on this show. So he's like, whatever. And now I got to look up this list. So okay. Oh, that's right. Scott Sistek at Como 4 in Seattle will be on. Oh. And that'll be a late show because he wants to do it at home because he's in Seattle. So that'll be a show that'll be on at like midnight. So it's going to be like really late.
Have him do it before he goes in.
Well, no, then it'll be like, because since Scott works not on air, he does a lot of the multimedia stuff. He pretty much runs Como 4's website.
Nice.
And does the weather stuff. So it's like he does weather blogging and the site. So that's what he does. So we're going to have him on, and we're going to discuss why the weather at the U.S. Open was so not Seattle-like. And then I would have complained, and I thought you'd complain too, about all the smoke from Canada, and that it's bringing all this yucky, hazy weather. So
it makes for nice sunsets. And what are you going to do? You know, I'm not a Canadian firefighter. I can't stop it.
Yeah. But yeah, those are what we have for right now. There's other people that have said that they might be on or not. We'll have to wait and see. So we thank you, Patrick, for being on and not getting fired because you have a newscast soon.
Yes.
So anyway, so we thank everybody else. So if we do have a show next week, we'll let you know. Otherwise, we'll be on in 2 weeks because I'm not going to try and stress myself. But anyway, so thanks everybody. Have a great weekend when it comes, and God bless.